Arya Matt stepped off the plane with a single carry-on that held more legal documents than clothes. 11 years of distance fit into one small black suitcase and a knot between her ribs. Ohio air felt heavier than New York's thicker with memories she thought she'd outgrown. The rental car practically drove itself through her hometown. Muscle memory took every turn: the faded strip mall, the sagging high school, the corner where her dad once taught her to parallel park. Everything looked smaller now, like someone had hit zoom out on her childhood. Maple Street hadn't changed much. The house had. The garden her father planted was gone, replaced with gravel. The basketball hoop he'd installed for her 13th birthday had disappeared. The white siding was dingier, the porch rail chipped. The mailbox read Carlton now, not Matt. She parked across the street and sat for a moment, fingers resting on the handle of her bag. Inside were copies of the original purchase agreement, the co-signed mortgage, the military service clause nobody but her had taken seriously. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her head. Always keep copies. Arya, paper is power. Before she could knock, the front door swung open. Arya. Her mother breathed, eyes shining too wet and too bright. She looked smaller, her hair thinned and hastily dyed. Oh, honey. Her mother pulled her into a hug that felt more like an apology than a welcome. The familiar scent of laundry. Soap was buried under cigarette smoke and stale. Grease. Welcome home. A man's voice. Slurred. Arya turned just in time to catch his fist. Blow cracked across her cheekbone, sending stars skittering at the edges of her vision. Bourbon fumes washed over her. Rick! Her mother gasped. What are you doing? Rick Carlton, mid-50s, beer gut, stained t-shirt that announced world's best grandpa, despite the lack of any grandchildren, smirked. That's for not showing up for the wedding. Or the move. Or anything, he said. You don't disappear for 11 years and just stroll back in here like you own the place. Arya straightened slowly, fingers brushing the fresh bruise. Her voice came out calm, almost bored. Hello to you too, Rick. Her mother fluttered uselessly between them. He's had a lot to drink. It's been a hard week with your grandfather, and it's fine, Arya said, stepping past them into the dim hallway. The hardwood floors her father had refinished by hand were scuffed and dull. The family photos that once lined the walls had been replaced by Rick's deer heads and neon beer signs he thought a punch could knock. Her back into the scared girl who'd left on a Greyhound bus. He had no idea she'd come home with something far more dangerous than anger. She'd come home with proof. Arya hadn't taken 3 steps into the house before the walls themselves seemed to close in around her. Everything smelled wrong: cigarettes, old beer, fried food that lingered like a sour film over the air. Her father's home had always smelled like sawdust, lemon polish, and Sunday chili simmering on the stove. Now it smelled like someone else's life entirely. Someone lazy. Someone careless. Rick Carlton dropped back into her father's old recliner, which had been reupholstered in camouflage fabric so loud it hurt her eyes. A half-empty bottle of bourbon rested on the arm. His booted feet were propped on the coffee table her dad built the year Arya turned 8. Look at her. Lid, Rick drawled to her mother. Miss New York City herself. All high and mighty. Her mother wrung her hands. Rick, please, she just arrived. Yeah, and she arrived 11 years late. Arya paused in the center of the living room, taking in every violation of her father's memory. His framed service medals were gone. The shadow box he'd made gone. His woodworking books and the photo of the 3 of them at the county fair gone. But Rick's trophies were everywhere. Fishing plaques. Deer heads. A neon sign shaped like a beer bottle. Her voice remained level, though her pulse hammered against her skin. Where's Dad's stuff? Rick belched. Trash, garage sale. Same thing. Arya's mother flinched. Rick, what? It's true. Junk is junk. Arya inhaled slowly, carefully. Military discipline had taught her how to keep her face still, her tone neutral, even when rage burned through her veins like shrapnel. Where's my room? She asked. Her mother brightened too quickly. Oh, I'll show you. Anything to avoid confrontation, her childhood bedroom was barely recognizable. Half the space was filled with boxes labeled Rick's hunting gear and bowling trophies. A metal pull-out couch sat where her bed used to be. The walls were bare, no posters, no photos, not even the faint outline of where her bookshelf once stood. We made some changes, her mother said weakly. Rick needed an office, and you weren't using the room. Arya stared at a box labeled Claire's junk, wrong name. Wrong life. Wrong everything. My art portfolio was in here, she said. Yearbooks, letters, my camera. Her mother's eyes darted away. We decluttered last spring. Arya's jaw tightened, decluttered, as if her entire childhood belonged in a trash bin. I'll get a hotel, she said. Her mother stiffened. No, absolutely not. Family stays with family. What will people think? Arya let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Always that phrase. Always the neighbors. The opinions of strangers mattered more to her mother than the bruises on her daughter's face. Speaking of bruises, her cheek throbbed in time with her heartbeat. I need the bathroom, Arya said. She locked the door behind her and finally let her expression fall, the tight jaw. The cold eyes, the exhaustion. The bathroom was worse. Rick's razors clogged the sink. Prescription bottles littered the counter. Percocet, Vicodin, Xanax. A Confederate flag shower curtain hung where her mother once used floral lace. In her father's house, a man who served 2 tours overseas. A man who fought beside soldiers of every race and background. Her stomach twisted. She turned on her phone. Opened the secure document folder her assistant had sent. There they were, the original purchase agreement, her co-signed mortgage papers from 2009, the conditional ownership clause, the military service, provision protecting her legal rights. Her reflection in the mirror steadied. The bruise darkened across her cheekbone. She lifted her phone and snapped photos, angles, timestamps, lighting. Documentation. Downstairs. Rick's voice rumbled through the floorboards. Ungrateful. Waltzes in like she owns the place. Arya smiled, a hard, slow smile. If only he knew. She stepped back into the hallway, each footstep deliberate, controlled. Her mother hovered in the kitchen, stirring something from a can. Rick stood in the doorway, blocking the light like a shadow swollen with resentment. Arya grabbed her purse and keys. I'm going to see Grandma. At this hour? Her mother asked. She asked me to come. Rick snorted. Figures. That old bat always liked you best. Arya met his glare evenly. Don't wait up. As she left, his voice chased her down the walkway. This is my house. My rules. Arya paused, turned slightly, and spoke softly. Of course. Your house. Your rules. Her eyes glinted. For now. Rick smirked, thinking he'd won. Arya walked into the night with a secret he didn't yet know was a weapon. Her name was still on the deed, and she'd come home prepared for war. Arya didn't go to her grandmother's house first. She drove to the only place she knew she could think clearly, the old marina. Her father used to bring her here on Saturdays, letting her dangle her legs off the dock while he fixed boat engines for extra cash. The water was dark and still tonight, the sky heavy with Ohio humidity. She sat in the car with the engine off and pulled the thick folder from her bag. Not the copies, these were the originals. Yellowed edges, embossed seals, signatures in her father's strong handwriting. She laid them across the passenger seat like puzzle pieces she had memorized long ago. Original. Mortgage agreement minus 2009. Her name sat right beside her father's. She was barely an adult then, but the bank insisted a cosigner would help. Her dad told her it was for responsibility. Now she understood it was protection, service member protection clause. Her gaze lingered on the paragraph that had saved her life more than once. Her military enrollment activated a legal freeze on any property transfer without her direct, notarized signature, meaning her mother and Rick's attempt to transfer the deed was illegal. Arya exhaled slowly, feeling something sharp and electric stir in her chest. Not anger, not grief. Power. She flipped to the next section. Property, transfer records, county registrar. Her contact at the registrar, an old classmate she'd helped years ago, had emailed her the notice. Transfer denied, co-owner active military status. Signature missing. Transaction flagged for a review. Rick and her mother must have tried to push the transfer through without her knowing. Maybe they thought she'd never return. Maybe they believed a decade of silence meant she'd surrendered her rights. But Arya had never surrendered anything in her life. She scanned more documents. Estate taxes, maintenance costs, home insurance renewal notices. There were discrepancies everywhere. Missing payments. Address changes she'd never approved. Forged signatures that didn't remotely match hers. At the bottom of the stack was the most damning page. A photocopy of a loan application with her name signed in shaky, forced handwriting. Rick's sloppy attempt at forgery. Her jaw tightened. So that's how he funded his tools. His bar tabs. His hobbies. The marina lights reflected off the papers, turning her father's old initials into shining proof that she was still tied to the home he built. Her phone buzzed. Grandma. You need to come here. Sweetheart. Tonight. Arya put the papers back in the folder with ritual precision. Each page sliding into place like ammunition being loaded into a magazine. She drove through the quiet streets toward her grandmother's house, a small white bungalow lit by warm yellow lamps. Grandma opened the door before Arya could knock. You brought the papers, the old woman said, her voice steady. Good, you'll need them. Arya stepped inside. Grandma, what's going on? Grandma closed the door behind her and locked it. That man has done more damage than you know, she whispered. And your mother? She's drowning. She guided Arya to the kitchen table, where another folder fatter, Messier waited. Sit, she said. You're going to hear everything. And when you do, you'll understand why you came home now. Of all times. Arya sat. Grandma opened her folder, and that was the moment. Arya realized the legal documents she carried were only the beginning. The real war had already started. Grandma. Dot's kitchen smelled like cinnamon tea and old paper, a stark contrast to the sour, stale air of Arya's childhood home. The table between them was covered in receipts, printed emails, pawn slips, bank statements, and a scattering of handwritten notes. It looked less like a grandmother's kitchen table and more like a detective's evidence board. Arya leaned forward. Where did all this come from? Your mother, Grandma said quietly. Before you arrived, she brought me some of it. The rest, I collected myself. Because I knew she wasn't telling you the whole truth. Arya swallowed. What truth? Grandma touched the top page, a pawn slip dated 9 months earlier. Your father's medals, she said. Rick sold them the same month he lost his job. Arya's jaw clenched. He what? Slipping into the line item below, Grandma pointed to another receipt. The woodworking tools your father left you? Sold. The ones he used to build your bookshelves, your bed frame, the kitchen table gone. She flipped more pages, voice tightening. Your mother's engagement ring, her jewelry, her wedding china, all pawned bit by bit. Arya stared, stunned. Mom would never, your mother didn't, Grandma interrupted. Rick did. Arya blinked, anger and disbelief crashing together. And she let him? Grandma's expression turned sadder than Arya had ever seen. Your mother hasn't let anything in years. That man has chipped at her until she don't even recognize herself. He controls her money, her car, her accounts, everything. The stack of papers thickened as Grandma continued. He forged her signature on 3 credit cards, she said. Ran all of them to the limit. Took out payday loans in her name. Took out a home equity line without her knowledge. Arya felt the blood drain from her face. The house. Dad's house? Grandma nodded. He's been borrowing against it for 2 years. Arya gripped the edge of the table, knuckles whitening. Does Mom know? She found out last winter, Grandma whispered. But by then, the debt was too deep. And Rick. He made her feel like it was her fault. Arya's pulse roared in her ears. How? He told her she didn't support him enough? That he wouldn't have needed loans if she respected him? That everything he did for the family? Arya shook her head slowly, rage rising like a tide. He's bleeding her dry? No, Grandma said softly. He's bleeding the whole house dry. She pushed forward a photo of the living room taken 3 months earlier. The walls were cracked. The ceiling water-stained. Lamps missing. Curtains torn. The house looked tired, battered, abandoned. That's what your home has become, Grandma whispered. A place of rot? Arya's throat tightened. More documents followed, insurance claims. Rick filed for damaged tools that didn't exist. Letters from debt collectors addressed to her mother. Shut off. Warnings from utility companies. Insurance. Cancellation notices. Arya's mind reeled. Why didn't Mom tell me? She demanded. Grandma sighed. She didn't want you to see her like this. She thought she could fix things. She thought she could protect you. Protect me? Arya snapped. I walked into that house for 5 minutes and he punched me. Grandma's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Honey, that's not the first time he's hit her. Arya froze. What? Your mother hides the bruises. Wears long sleeves. Says she walked into doors. But I know the truth. She's too ashamed to say it out loud. Arya pressed a trembling hand to her forehead. Shame. That was always the weapon abusers used best. Grandma leaned forward, voice trembling but fierce. I called you because your mother can't fight this alone. And Rick knows it. That man doesn't just want the house, Arya. He wants everything tied to your father's name. Arya looked at the documents again, the receipts. The forged signatures, the pawn slips, the missing belongings. Every page was a piece of evidence. Every page a story of destruction. Every page a confirmation that her home, her father's legacy, was under siege. She straightened, spine rigid, expression hardening like steel cooling under pressure. Grandma, she said quietly, I'm not here to visit. She closed the folder and slid it toward herself. I'm here to take it all back. Arya didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. She sat at Grandma Dot's kitchen table until dawn, surrounded by 2 piles of documents. Pile 1, Rick's crimes, forged signatures, pawn slips, loan papers, medical records showing patterns of bruises on her mother, bank statements proving financial abuse, evidence of theft, and household neglect. Pile 2, her weapons, the original property deed, the co-signed mortgage documents, the service member protection clause, and the notarized agreement her father once drafted that gave her partial ownership to secure the family home for future generations by 6 a.m. She had highlighted every clause, every loophole, every point of leverage. Grandma shuffled into the kitchen, wrapping her robe tighter. You haven't slept. No, Arya said, her eyes sharper than they had been in years. I couldn't. You're your father's daughter, Grandma murmured with pride and grief tangled together. Frank always read every line twice. Arya allowed herself a small smile. Dad taught me well. Grandma sat beside her. So what happens next? Arya stacked the papers neatly. Now, I build a case. Step 1. Call the lawyer who left her father like a DROTR at 7 a.m. sharp. Arya dialed a number she'd memorized years ago. Jonathan Morrison Law Office. A woman answered. Tell him it's Arya Matt, she said. He'll take the call. The receptionist put her on hold for 2 seconds before Arya. Jonathan's deep voice came through. I thought you were overseas. Not anymore. I'm home. Well, he said, judging by your tone, that's not good news. It's not, Arya confirmed. But it will be. She explained everything, the forged signatures, the illegal loan attempts, the assault, the property damage, the pawned heirlooms, the debt Rick forced onto her mother. Jonathan interrupted only once. Did he hit you? Yes. Did you document it? Arya snapped a photo of her cheek and texted it. There, fresh evidence. Timestamps included. Jonathan exhaled sharply. Good. Come to my office at 10. I'll be there with all documents prepared. He paused. Arya, your father would be proud of you. Her chest tightened. Let's make sure Rick regrets ever stepping into that house. Step 2. Setting the Tezar. Spent the next 2 hours scanning the entire document stack into organized digital folders. One for illegal fraud, one for financial abuse, one for property damage, one for domestic violence indicators, and one called simply Exhibits Against Carlton. She recorded a detailed, unemotional video testimony describing the assault that her mother's emotional deterioration, financial manipulation, Rick's attempts to steal the house property, destruction, the missing heirlooms, and her co-ownership. Status everything was delivered with cold precision, not anger, not emotion. A prosecutor once told her, facts win wars. Feelings lose them. When she finished, she forwarded the folders to Jonathan with a message. These are the first 48 pieces. More to follow. Step 3. Securing her MOTR before meeting Jonathan. Arya stopped at the pharmacy and bought a disposable phonia. USB trivia packet of Bruise Care Patches 2 protein bars because she knew her mother wouldn't have eaten. She knocked on her mother's door at 8:45 a.m. Her mother answered in a robe. Eyes red from crying, her face pale. Arya, she whispered. You shouldn't be here. Mom, Arya said softly. He can't know we spoke. I need you to take this. She handed her the burner phone. I'll call only this number when it's safe. Her mother trembled. He checks everything. My texts. My call logs. He doesn't like secrets. Arya held her mother's shaking hands. You're not keeping secrets. You're surviving? Then she gently pulled back the robe sleeve. A deep purple bruise covered her. Mother's upper arm. Her mother pulled away immediately. It's nothing. I tripped. It's not nothing, Arya said firmly. And I need you to hear me. This is the last time he will ever touch you. Her mother's lip quivered. Arya, he'll retaliate. Good, Arya said, her voice cold as steel. I hope he tries something. It'll only strengthen the case. Her mother stared at her, fearful, hopeful, confused. She wasn't ready to choose freedom, but Arya was ready to build it for her. Stay close to Grandma today, Arya said. Do not go home? Her mother nodded. I lie. Arya walked away without looking back. Step 4. The lawyer's OFI, Jonathan Morrison, was older, now gray-haired. Slower moving, but his eyes were as sharp as they were when he coached her. Father through legal decisions decades ago. He looked at Arya's bruise, his jaw turning into granite. We're filing assault charges immediately. I want more, Arya said. I want everything. Jonathan nodded. Then we go for the financial jugular. He spread her documents across his conference table. His eyebrows rose with every page. "This isn't just negligence," he muttered. "This is calculated fraud, identity theft, property manipulation, coercion, domestic violence, financial collapse. We can build 6 independent cases. 7 if we include stolen valor with the medals." Arya leaned back in her chair. "What's our next move?" Jonathan looked at her with a small, approving smile. "The next move," he said, "is to let Rick dig his own grave. And trust me, he will." By the time Arya walked out of that office, she wasn't the wounded daughter who'd come home broken. She was a soldier, a strategist, a woman reclaiming her legacy with the precision of a military operation. Rick thought he punched a girl returning home. He had no idea he had just woken a warrior. Morning of the memorial arrived cold and gray, the kind of stillness that felt like a held breath. Arya stood in front of the church where her grandfather's service would be held, fingers curled around the memorial program. His photograph, smiling, proud, eyes sharp, even in old age, stared back at her dot. He was the reason she came home, the reason she stayed, the reason she fought. People turned as she walked in. Small-town whispers traveled fast. "She's back. After 11 years. Heard Rick hit her. Heard the house is falling apart." Arya ignored every glance and walked down the aisle to sit beside Grandma Dot. The old woman squeezed her hand, whispering, "He'd be so happy you're here." Arya swallowed hard. "I know." But the pew behind her creaked and dread prickled across her skin. She didn't need to turn to know the source. Rick and her mother slid into the row. Her mother kept her head down. Rick sat with his legs spread wide, wearing a wrinkled suit that smelled faintly of whiskey even this early in the day. The pastor began the service scripture, hymns, stories. Neighbors shared memories of her grandfather, his kindness, his carpentry skills, his steady presence. But Arya's turning point came halfway through, when a man in uniform stood to speak. "Frank Matt was one of the finest soldiers I ever served beside," he said. "And one hell of a father." He talked about his daughter nonstop. Arya this, Arya that. He told every new recruit she'd change the world someday. Arya felt tears burn beneath her eyelids. Rick let out a scoff. Arya turned just enough to see the sneer curling on his face. That was it. The moment something inside her snapped into perfect alignment, her grief sharpened into purpose. Her father wouldn't want her silent. He wouldn't want her small. He wouldn't want Rick desecrating his memory or destroying the home he built. When the service ended, the crowd flowed out toward the hall for refreshments. Arya stayed back, needing a minute alone in the sanctuary. She ran her fingers over the edge of the pew. Grounding herself in the wood her father once sanded for the church fundraiser decades earlier, when she finally walked into the reception hall, the entire room turned toward a commotion near the coffee table. Rick loud, angry, red-faced. Mother looked mortified as he slammed a plastic cup down. "This whole thing is ridiculous," he barked. "Frank wasn't that great. And everyone pretending like Arya's some golden child for coming back. Give me a break." A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. Neighbors exchanged uneasy glances. Arya stopped walking. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't rush. She simply stepped forward, the room parting around her like a tide. "Rick," she said, her tone low and razor sharp, "my father earned every word spoken today. You earn none of the respect you demand." People froze. Some nodded. Some exhaled in relief. Rick turned, eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone." "No," Arya replied. "For the first time in 11 years, I'm using my real tone." Her mother whispered, "Arya, please." But Arya wasn't speaking to her. She faced Rick fully. Steel-spined, uncheckable. "You touched me once," she said. "Never again. You forged documents." I know. You sold my father's belongings. I know. You tried to steal the house. I know. And starting tomorrow, so will the police, the county registrar, and a judge. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Rick's face drained of color. Arya leaned in, voice dropping to a lethal whisper. This memorial marks the end of my father's life. She straightened, and the end of your control. In that moment, the turning point wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was simply truth spoken clearly and publicly. The war no longer lived in shadows, and everyone in that hall now knew. Arya Matt had returned not as a daughter seeking peace, but as a soldier reclaiming her family's legacy. By Monday morning, Arya was no longer the estranged daughter who'd crept back into town with a suitcase and a bruise. She walked into the county courthouse like a commander entering a battlefield she'd already mapped out. Attorney Morrison was waiting for her in the marble lobby, a leather briefcase in hand and a look that told her everything was about to shift. You ready? He asked. I've been ready for 11 years. Arya replied. They climbed the courthouse stairs to Judge Harrison's chambers. Morrison laid out the evidence, the forged signatures, the fraudulent loan, the home equity line Rick used for gambling, the illegal deed transfer, the photos of the assault, Arya's co-signing agreement that was still legally binding, and the deployment clause her father had insisted be added. Judge Harrison lifted his eyebrows. Your father was smart? Arya nodded. He was also cautious. He always said paper protects you when people don't. The judge reviewed the packet page by page. With each turn, Rick's fragile claim to the house crumbled. Finally, Harrison set the folder down. Injunction granted, he declared. Effective immediately. 6 words that changed everything. All assets are frozen. No sales, no transfers, no removals. Ms. Matt is granted immediate legal access to secure the property. Sheriff's deputies will accompany you. Arya exhaled slowly, victory, steady and quiet. Rick Carton's kingdom had just legally collapsed. By noon, Arya, Morrison, and Deputy Martinez were parked in front of the Maple Street house. Contractors waited in trucks behind them, ready to begin restoration as soon as the law allowed them to enter. Rick's truck was in the driveway. Perfect. Martinez knocked loudly. Inside, muffled shouting erupted. Then the door swung open to reveal Rick, sweaty, hungover, and furious. What the hell is this? He barked. The law, Arya answered, stepping forward. Martinez handed him the injunction. You are required to vacate the property. Ms. Matt will do a full inventory. You may remove personal clothing only, and you will do so under supervision. Rick's jaw worked like he was chewing nails. This is my house. Actually, Arya said calmly, it's my father's house. And legally still mine. Rick lunged forward, but Martinez blocked him with an outstretched arm. Sir, don't. Arya walked past them and stepped into the living room. It was worse than she remembered. Beer stains on the carpet, holes in the wall, the built-ins her father crafted ripped out and replaced with cheap plywood. Her chest tightened, but not with grief. With resolve. She snapped photos from every angle. Damage, missing items, signs of neglect. Morrison documented the financial papers scattered across Rick's desk. Rick followed her, yelling the whole time, You can't record that. You can't take pictures. You're trespassing. Arya didn't even look up. Sheriff's deputy, court order, and co-ownership clause. I can do this all day. When she reached the basement, the reality hit even harder. Her father's workshop had been gutted. Pegboards empty. Tool chests missing. The workbench covered in beer cans. Something inside her hardened like steel. Martinez escorted Rick upstairs, allowing him 10 minutes to collect clothes. Even then, Rick continued shouting threats, insults, delusions of control he no longer had. But when they walked him out, bags in hand, Wrists shaking with rage, Arya didn't flinch. She stood on the porch, arms folded. "This is just the beginning," she said quietly. "You think you won?" He spat. "I'm not here to win," Arya replied. "I'm here to restore." Deputy Martinez ushered him to the patrol car. Rick struggled, shouting over his shoulder, "I'll burn the place down before you take it." "A fatal mistake," Martinez stopped him cold. "Sir, that's a terroristic threat recorded on my body cam." Rick froze, and the reality of his situation finally hit him. Hard. He swallowed, suddenly pale. As Martinez drove him away for a bail violation, Arya turned back to the house, her house now surrounded by contractors waiting for her word. "Begin," she ordered. The crew moved instantly, ripping out rotted carpet, photographing structural damage, marking areas for restoration. Securing heirloom recovery list. Area walked into the center of the living room, sunlight breaking through the dusty blinds. This house had been abused, exploited, and neglected, just like she had. But now she had the law, the truth, and her father's legacy in her hands. And for the first time since stepping off the plane, she felt something like belonging, something like strength, something like home being rebuilt when bored. One document, one decision at a time. The day after the legal takeover, Arya sat at the dining table what was left of it, reviewing contractor bids when she heard cautious footsteps in the doorway. Her mother, Lydia, looked smaller than she ever had. Her shoulders hunched, hands twisting the strap of her purse. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but for the first time, there was something else behind them. Awareness, fear, maybe even guilt. "Arya," she whispered, voice fragile. "I heard about yesterday. The police, the injunction." Rick said. Arya didn't look up. "Rick lies as easily as he breathes." Lydia flinched like the truth physically struck her. "He said you were trying to humiliate us?" Arya closed the file and met her mother's eyes, unblinking. "No, I'm trying to save what's left of this family." Silence hung between them. From upstairs, the sound of contractors pulling carpet echoed through the house. Dust drifted from the ceiling like the home was shedding its old skin. Lydia slowly stepped inside, her eyes roving over the gutted living room. "It looks worse than I thought." "It looked even worse when he lived here," Arya replied. Lydia swallowed hard. She walked to the wall where Rick had ripped out the built-ins years earlier. She ran her hand along the torn drywall. "I used to dust this every week," she murmured. "Your father carved these shelves himself. He spent 3 months on them." Arya softened just a fraction. "I know." Her mother turned, eyes shimmering. "I didn't know how much he'd destroyed. I didn't know half of what you showed the judge. I thought he just drank too much, got stressed. I kept making excuses." "You kept losing pieces of yourself," Arya said gently. Lydia stared at her daughter, a long, searching look. "Why didn't you tell me he hit you? Why didn't you stop him?" Arya countered. Her mother deflated. "Because I was afraid. Because I thought being with someone, even someone like Rick, was better than being alone." She sank into a chair. "But seeing him dragged out in handcuffs, and seeing what he did to this house," tears spilled freely. "I finally realized I've been living in a lie." Arya sat across from her. "It's not too late to wake up." Lydia wiped her eyes. "I want to help. Whatever you're doing to fix this place, I want to be part of it." Arya nodded. "Then stay, learn, rebuild with me." Her mother hesitated, then reached for a sanding block on the table. "Show me where to start." Over the next days, something unexpected began to take shape inside the house on Maple Street. Not just new wood, new paint, or new structure, but something Arya thought she'd never have again. A family dot, not the one she left. Not the one that broke. A new version rebuilt the same way they were rebuilding the house. Carefully, deliberately, honestly. Each morning, Lydia arrived early, wearing old jeans and a determined expression. She helped strip wallpaper in the dining room, scrub smoke stains off the kitchen ceiling, and pack up the last remnants of Rick's Chaos beer bottles. Broken tools, mismatched junk. No excuses. No denial, just work. And every hammer strike, every scrape of a putty knife, seemed to chip away a layer of fog from her spirit. At first, the contractors worked around her politely. But soon, they treated her differently, like someone who belonged. "Mrs. Matt, you want to help reinstall this trim? We could use another hand on this patching compound. Your husband had the wrong screws in this cabinet. Help me fix it." She laughed once. Actually laughed. Arya nearly dropped her tape measure one afternoon. James, the lead contractor, called Arya into the living room. "Thought you'd want to see this," he said. They'd recreated the built-in shelves her father made. Every joint smooth, every line identical to the old photos. But then he pointed at the bottom corner, where her father used to sign his projects. "We added this. If it's okay," James said, burned into the wood. "FM plus AM rebuilt 2025. Frank Matt and Arya Matt." Arya's breath caught. Lydia touched the engraving with trembling fingers. "He'd love this," she whispered. Arya didn't trust her voice. So she just nodded as they worked. More people began showing up, not out of curiosity, but out of loyalty. Mrs. Patterson brought lemonade and sandwiches for the crew. Dad's army friends stopped by on rotation, offering muscle and tools. Neighbors asked what they could donate, repair, or help clean. Grandma Dot sent over a quilt for Uriah's old room. They didn't just restore a house. They restored a community that Rick had methodically pushed away. One evening, while wiping dust off the new staircase rail, Lydia said softly, "I forgot we had people. I thought when your father died, the world shrank to just me and my mistakes." Arya paused. "Mom, people stayed away because Rick pushed them out. You didn't lose everyone. You were isolated. I let myself be isolated." Arya didn't argue. Lydia wasn't wrong, but she wasn't beyond repair either. That night, they ate takeout at the dining table her father built. The wood was freshly polished, glowing under the warm lights. Arya watched her mother brush a hand over its surface. "He made this the year you turned 10, Lydia murmured. "Said he wanted a table sturdy enough to hold our whole future." Arya smiled faintly. "Then we'd better make sure the future is worthy of it." Lydia looked at her with something new in her eyes. "Respect. Thank you," she said. "For coming home. For fighting. For not giving up on this place." Arya took a slow breath. "I didn't come home for this house," she said quietly. "I came home because some things, some people are worth fixing." Lydia's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She reached across the table and squeezed Arya's hand. Two women bruised, rebuilding, rediscovering each other. A house once broken now stood halfway whole, and a family that had crumbled was learning slowly how to stand again. Rick's collapse didn't happen all at once. It wasn't a single blow, or a single arrest, or a single humiliation. It was a series of consequences, each one tighter, heavier, inescapable, until the man who once swaggered around her father's house like a king found himself stripped of every illusion of control. The first hit came through the media. The video from the courthouse, Rick slurring about military garbage, insulting veterans, belittling her father's Purple Heart, had gone local viral. A teacher from Lydia's school shared it. Then a veteran shared it. Then another. Within 2 days, every VFW hall within 50 miles had banned Rick for stolen valor, disrespect, and fraudulent claims. Men who once bought him drinks now spit at his name. The second blow came from the district attorney. Rick had violated bail twice. public intoxication, threatening arson, showing up at Lydia's workplace, attempting to force entry through. Dale the Day stacked charges like bricks. Assault, forgery, financial fraud, coercion, violation of a restraining order, attempted intimidation, stolen valor, misrepresentation. And now, thanks to the video public threats of arson, his attorney, Simmons, tried bargaining. The DA laughed him out of the room with the evidence Aria collected. Even the judge, who usually went easy on domestic cases, refused bail. Entirely, Rick went back to jail, this time, wearing an orange jumpsuit that clashed remarkably with his bruised ego. The third blow came through money. Home equity loan Rick forged, reversed, flagged, handed to investigators. The gambling debts he'd hidden for years, sent directly to his jail account. Creditors began circling like vultures. He had no job, no income, no access to Lydia's accounts. All his remaining assets, what little existed, were seized to begin paying restitution. His brother Dale tried to argue, but Dale had his own charges for attempted break-in. He backed off fast once his lawyer told him he could face jail time too. The fourth blow came through community exposure. Aria's email to neighbors and family had spread wider than she imagined. One by one, people came forward with stories. Rick trying to borrow money. Rick bragging about fixing the Matt house his way. Rick claiming he served overseas. Rick selling items at flea markets that matched her father's belongings, too. Veterans recognized her father's combat knife among the items. One of them said, "If I'd known what he was doing, I would have put him in the ground myself." Rick's fake reputation crumbled completely. The final blow came from Lydia, when Rick called from jail aloud. One daily phone call Lydia didn't answer. Not the first day. Not the second. Not the third. On the fourth day, she picked up. Rick tried his usual tactics. "Baby, they framed me. You have to help me. You owe me loyalty. We built a life." Lydia's voice was calm, stronger than Aria had ever heard it. "We built nothing," she said. "You used me. You used my daughter. And now you will face what you've done." Then she added, voice breaking only slightly, "I'm filing for a divorce." "You will never step foot in this house again," Rick screamed, begged, threatened, cried. But Lydia hung up quietly, hand steady. Aria watched her, pride swelling in her chest. Rick's downfall was complete. He had lost the house, the money, the community, the reputation, the access, the control, and the woman he thought would always protect him. Rick Carlton was no longer a tyrant, just a man alone in a cell, finally forced to live with the consequences of the life he tried to steal. 3 weeks after Rick's final collapse, the house on Maple Street looked nothing like the wreck Aria had walked into on that first day back in Ohio. It looked like a resurrection. The morning sun shimmered across freshly polished hardwood floors, revealing grain lines her father once admired like fingerprints, unique, irreplaceable, alive again. The walls, once dingy and nicotine-stained, now glowed in warm, soft tones that made the entire house feel like a sunrise. The built-in shelves in the living room, meticulously recreated by James, stood proudly like a memorial. Aria ran her hand along the edge, feeling the engraved initials .fm plus AM, rebuilt 22.5. Her father's legacy. Her contribution. Their marked-up a kitchen was next. Gone were the greasy cabinets, the peeling laminate, the broken handles Rick had ignored for years. In their place, beautifully refinished woodwork, new hardware, and a butcher block island that echoed her father's craftsmanship. "Feels like I can breathe again," Lydia said as she stepped inside, carrying a vase of fresh tulips. She placed them gently on the center counter. "Your dad would have loved this." Aria smiled. He's here in every board. They moved to the dining room, the heart of the house. The restored table her father had built decades earlier shined with a deep, rich finish. Lydia traced the edge of it reverently. I forgot it was this beautiful, she whispered. No, Arya corrected. Rick made you forget? Her mother nodded, eyes soft with both sadness and healing. Thank you for giving it back. Upstairs, Arya's old room was transformed to fresh paint, bright light, polished floors. A small gallery wall held her childhood drawings, saved by neighbors who'd quietly rescued them from the garage sale years earlier. Looks like you never left, Lydia said. Arya laughed gently. I definitely left, but part of me always stayed. The basement, once Rick's storage nightmare, was now a functional workshop again. Tools hung neatly. The workbench her father built stood solid, cleaned and oiled. With the hidden compartment preserved and marked with a plaque, Frank Matt's Craft Corner, restored by his daughter. 2025. Arya stood in the center of the house, breathing in the scent of wood, lemon polish, and possibility. The air felt lighter, almost sacred. The Matt house was whole again, not just restored, but redeemed. And in its restored walls, Arya felt something she hadn't felt in years. Home. The day before Arya returned to New York, she stood on the porch of the fully restored Matt house, feeling the warm breeze move through the neighborhood like a promise. Lydia joined her, a mug of tea in hand. Looking healthier, lighter than Arya had seen since her teenage years. Hard to believe this is the same place, Lydia murmured, scanning the gorgeous siding. The repainted shutters, the renewed garden beds. It feels alive again. It is, Arya said softly, because the rot is gone. They watched the contractors load up the last of their equipment. Neighbors waved from their yards. Dad's army friends had stopped by earlier to drop off the final recovered metal. Even the air seemed fresher, a community restored, a house restored, a family mending. Are you sure about renting it out? Lydia asked. You could stay, make this your home again. Arya smiled gently. Mom, I have a life in New York, a good one. But this house, our house, is part of who I am. I won't abandon it again. You didn't abandon it, Lydia corrected. You came back when it mattered. Arya didn't argue. Maybe it was true. Just then, Jonathan Morrison pulled into the driveway with a folder in hand. Final paperwork, he said. Rick officially forfeits all claims. The property is yours alone, free and clear. Congratulations, Arya. She signed the documents, feeling a weight lift she didn't even realize she still carried. What happens to Rick now? Lydia asked quietly. Sentencing hearing next month, Morrison said. Given all charges and his violations, the judge will likely give him the full term. Lydia nodded, but didn't quote. She simply whispered, I hope you learned something. Arya wasn't interested in Rick's growth. Her father's legacy was safe. Her mother was free. Her own peace reclaimed. Later that evening, they hosted a small gathering, neighbors, friends, veterans. They shared food, stories, and memories of Frank Matt. Laughter filled the home that had once echoed with tension and fear. As sunset painted the sky gold. Arya stepped outside alone, feeling the porch beneath her feet. She touched the railing her father had built, feeling its familiar sturdiness. Did it, Dad? She whispered. We brought it home. She closed her eyes, letting the quiet settle around her. Not victory. Not revenge. Just resolution. And peace. Final message for the listener. This story reminds us of a powerful truth. You can rebuild what others tried to destroy. House, family, dignity, even your own sense of self. You are not weak for leaving. You are not wrong for fighting. You are not late for returning. When faced with manipulation, abuse, or betrayal, remember, documentation is power. Boundaries are protection. And the past only defines you if you let it. Most of all, sometimes the strongest. Revenge is simply rebuilding your life stronger than they ever expected.